Now, Beef and Lamb New Zealand's manifesto stated that they wish to see a limit to the amount that could be offset from trees to curb the trend of corporates, both here in New Zealand, such as Air New Zealand, and our overseas companies gobbling up our food-producing footprint. James Shaw said it wasn't too much a problem. That's what I heard on the radio anyway. But Labour have decided to pivot last week with a pledge post-election to revise the national environment standards for plantation forestry to ensure highly productive classes of land can't be blanketed in plantation pines. So, joining us now on the phone is Chair for Beef and Lamb New Zealand, Andrew Morrison. Good evening, Andrew.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good. Now, it was interesting. I was listening to Hosking interview James Shaw, and there was a real discrepancy between some of the numbers that you'd been sharing in terms of 70,000 hectares and his so-called 13,000 hectares. Whereabouts are we missing the numbers?
Yeah, well let's start the discussion. We'll go right back to the start here, Sarah. We're actually not against trees on farms. We're not anti-forestry in any way. We have a position that we actually want land use to be linked to market and go where you're going to get the best return. Now that's linked to actually productive returns as opposed to legislative returns. So look, you'll know, Sarah, from your history in farming, a lot of us actually like trees on farms and we integrate them into our businesses. A lot of the stuff we're got 180,000 hectares of forestry integrated into our sheep beef land anyway. So let's just be quite clear at the onset. We're not against forestry. We're not taking a fight with forestry. What the conversation here is the incentives to incentivise carbon farming, which draws completely different behaviours, draws different returns, etc. So look, it's a long story to get to your question. Why have we got such difference in the numbers? The numbers have been rolled out from government. Effectively, those farms have been purchased 2018. It takes time to prepare those properties, then seeded in 2019. So that's where those figures are coming out from. Then James has stripped out the what he calls the replant versus the new plant, so that's quite legitimate. The figures that we're using are just the farms that have knowingly been purchased to go into the forestry in the 2019 through 2020 planting. So that's the figures we're doing.
I'm just actually thinking about the fact that we pride ourselves so highly here in New Zealand that we have been subsidy-free, as we are talking about COVID-free, for some time. The way that the ETS is being structured is very heavily leaning on the fact of supporting carbon farming from a subsidy perspective, not only thinking about the economic flow-on effect to the regions and, of course, jobs.
Yeah, well, that's quite right. And that's our concern, so I'm not getting into forestry value adding. That's great. And they create jobs too. Carbon farming, the study we did in Aurora, about 7 jobs per 1,000 hectares, sheep and beef, 5 point whatever, can't remember, jobs for forestry when you actually take into account the harvest phases of it. But if you're carbon farming, you're only getting about 0.5 of a job per 1,000 hectares. That doesn't provide any employment in the region. Basically, sheep and beef sector, we're a $12 billion sector. We employ about 90,000 people. That's about 5% of jobs are created by the sector, and that's another part of it. It's just not money made on farm. It's jobs created in communities, which is important too.
And of course, the news last week that Labour have decided to revise their position on this and bringing up the class system. Of course, Beef and Lamb have utilised this for many years when it comes to profit benchmarking. But now it's about our elite soils and resource consent needed to be sought for plantation. What's your thoughts? Is this a positive move?
It's really positive that the government of the day is starting to realise it's an issue. Then our advice to them would we don't jump to solutions and address a problem in secondary legislation like RMA. Let's address it in the primary legislation, which is the ETS reform bill. Effectively, what's driving the problem is the fact that we've got no limits on the NZU forestry offset, and that's what would drive it. So we're not too sure why controlling it through a land use classification RMA. We're not a big supporter of that, basically, because then you'll get some central planning organisation or even down to local government say you can plant your carrots on this block of land, but you can't plant your carrots there. You can plant your trees here, but you can't plant your trees there. So from our point of view, we'd much rather it was addressed in that primary legislation.
I was just actually thinking similar to about jamming the inputs in at a fast level, high on sugar, but of course pulling the reins back as tight as you can on the outputs level. Of course, what we're focusing on with regards to our water situation, Andrew. But I mean, the thing is where do you think that we can actually decide to nurture some of the support around RMA reforms, especially with a minister who wants to continue to ensure that environment is above all else?
Yeah, well, we would like to constructively engage with government as we always do. We'd like to point out that there's a real flaw in doing an RMA point of contact. We'd much rather do it in that primary source. At the heart of it all, Sarah, what's the problem we're trying to address here? And it's actually greenhouse gas emissions. So you'll be well aware of the HALOM, which we're building the on-farm ability to measure at a farm level of sequestration and emissions and mitigation. So, on the farm, we're addressing our issues through that process. This is the fact we're offsetting fossil fuel emissions from industrial or transport or whatever on our farm. One farmer said to me, I'm not interested in parking pollution on my farm. That's not actually going to achieve the goal of reduction. So that's the thing we want to be quite clear about. The goal is to reduce fossil fuel consumption. It's not around offset. The goal is not to put New Zealand in trade. And do we think this legislation is going to deliver that?
Okay, we're talking about this roadmap announced today. And of course, it clearly states to be a low emission economy, we need to reduce biogenic methane by 24 to 47% below 2017 levels. That's a change in terms of date. But how do you believe, when you had a bit of an overview through this, it stacks up in terms of our existing aspirations and visions as a red meat sector anyway?
Yeah, look, well, I think this is actually really interesting because we actually do need a plan for the sector. The COVID has demonstrated how important our sector is to export revenues for New Zealand. And that's right across the agri space. That's dairy, red meat, horticulture, viticulture, forestry and seafood. You see, this is where we're not having an argument with forestry, we're having a discussion around carbon farms. So, look, this strategy today was actually, this comes from the Primary Sector Council, and it's put some really interesting concepts out there around there. The concept of wellness linked to a Maori concept of taiao. I think it's a brilliant sort of a of the decisions you make. So simplicity of the work is blanket afforestation. Does that meet the taiao goals of wellness for communities and wellness for the land? So this is the challenge we've got as we come up with the strategy, which I think is great. Then how do we back work into a lot of our policy?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chair for Beef and Lamb New Zealand, Andrew Morrison, joining us there. And absolutely 100%, if we don't have rural communities, then we don't have a bustling, doubling, as this aspiration is, primary industry exports to ensure our recovery and be fit for a better world.
This is Sarah's Country.